Hello everyone, and welcome back to our horror storytelling channel. Today I'll take you on a journey that I'm sure will make you see the night sky in a very different way after hearing it. This story begins in the middle of the Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth. But it ends, possibly somewhere far beyond the stratosphere. And what makes it terrifying isn't what we don't know, but what we discovered and were forced to stay silent about forever. Do you believe that governments might hide the existence of an extraterrestrial creature just because its mere presence could shatter the very foundation of human belief? Do you think that the tiny skeletons found in ancient South American soil weren't children who ever lived here, but proof of something else? Something hunted, something from far away? Then fasten your seatbelt, because the story I'm about to tell isn't just about a tiny mummy resting behind a museum's glass case. It's about the secret behind its DNA, something people have died to keep silent. The story begins with a young archaeologist named Elias Navarro, who had just completed his PhD in anthropology from the University of Buenos Aires. He was the kind of person who slept with a notebook beside him and always carried a pair of thin latex gloves in his wallet, just in case he happened to unearth something. Elias believed with all his heart that the past still breathes, and the desert is where it whispers back to those who know how to listen. When he received an email from Dr. Mariana Galvez, a seasoned researcher in Chile, Elias immediately quit his temporary teaching job and headed to the Atacama Desert. Mariana didn't specify anything in the email, just a single line. "I found something that could change the entire history of human evolution, but I think I'm being watched." Elias arrived on a cold moonlit night, the wind blowing sand across the camp like a chilling whisper. The archaeological site was far from the town of San Pedro de Atacama, hidden in a barren valley where phone signals seemed to dissolve into thin air. Mariana greeted Elias inside a trembling canvas tent, her eyes sunken, her hands shaking as though she hadn't slept in days. When she opened a small metal box with a combination lock, Elias froze in shock. Inside was a mummy, only about 15 centimeters long, with a shrunken body and an abnormally elongated skull. Tiny cartilage-like bones lined its spine, and most striking of all, it had only 3 fingers. Its skin was dry but intact, shimmering with a dark bronze hue under the flashlight, and its eyes, 2 deep, hollow sockets as if carved by divine hands. Elias was speechless. Mariana handed him an envelope containing a USB drive and whispered, "This is the DNA data. I had to hide it from my own team. Some people have disappeared since I shared this discovery with NASA." Elias buried his fear and began the analysis. The streams of data flickering on the screen inside their makeshift lab sent chills down his spine. The genetic sequence of the creature matched no known life form. Not human, not primate, not any animal recorded in Earth's genomic history. But stranger still, a small portion of the DNA sequence matched. Elias. 1 fragment matched. Just 1. And the rest, a mosaic of sequences that no existing database had ever logged. Elias felt his heartbeat slow. This creature wasn't just non-human. It was the result of a hybridization between humans and something entirely unknown. And the most terrifying part, those alien genetic strands weren't decaying, they were still alive. Elias couldn't sleep that entire night. The wind howled through the gaps in the tent like the sighs of something lurking in the shadows. He sat alone, eyes glued to his computer screen, the flickering blue light casting a ghostly hue over his pale face. The lines of data began to look like the encrypted codes of a buried civilization, or one that had been deliberately hidden. He tried to send part of the data to his former advisor in Buenos Aires, but the connection was blocked. No signal. Even though the main station wasn't far, the network had been dead since he arrived. The next morning, Mariana was gone. Her sleeping bag was still in the tent, undisturbed, but her computer, the box containing the mummy, and her notebook, all had vanished. Elias panicked, running from tent to tent, asking everyone, but no one had seen her leave. One of the archaeologists, Diego, the equipment engineer, mentioned hearing wheels crunching in the sand the night before, but assumed it was a military patrol vehicle. Elias tried to stay calm and checked the USB drive. Fortunately, Mariana had backed up the DNA data and CT scan video of the mummy onto it. In the video, Elias noticed what Mariana hadn't had time to explain. Inside the creature's skull was a complex structure resembling a neural network, but made of an unknown fiber material that shimmered metallically. It wasn't just a skull, it looked like some kind of integrated device. Organic technology? A thinking being? Elias didn't dare think further. He returned to the town of San Pedro to look for clues, but Mariana had left no trace. At the hotel where she had stayed, the owner said she'd checked out 2 days earlier, even though Elias had seen her at the dig site the night before. Her name had also been erased from the registry. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. Someone was trying to erase her existence. And then he saw it. On the wall along the alley behind the hotel, a small symbol had been drawn in black charcoal, a circle with 3 diagonal lines crossing through it, and a single eye in the center. He didn't know what it meant, but he was certain it hadn't been there before. His gut told him he was being watched. When Elias returned to the dig site, he found it destroyed. The tents were slashed, equipment smashed, everything scattered across the sand. No one remained. There were no tire tracks, no footprints, like everything had been lifted off the earth, and among the wreckage lay a single latex glove. Elias's. Somehow, in some eerie way, they, or it, wanted Elias to know they had been there, and that they had touched him. Elias left the desert. He wandered across Chile, moving from city to city, trying to find an independent lab to reanalyze the DNA sample from the USB. But every time, either the machines malfunctioned or the technicians refused to proceed, saying, "Someone called ahead and warned us not to get involved." Once, on the road to Valparaiso, a black SUV with no license plate nearly ran him over. As he stood up, he saw the driver in a black suit staring from behind the windshield, a face void of expression, unblinking. Elias lived in constant fear, but he didn't give up. Eventually, he reached out to an old friend, Laura, a computer expert living in a coastal village. She'd gone off the grid after leaking government data and had once hacked a US weather satellite. Laura didn't ask many questions, just told him to hand over the USB. After 3 days, she returned with a look of terror in her eyes. "This isn't just DNA data," she said. "It's a map, a 3-dimensional map encoded in the genetic sequence. Elias, this isn't just something from space, it's instructions, a guide to somewhere." Elias looked at Laura as if she were joking, but she projected a grid of points onto the wall, like a star map with shimmering coordinates. At the center was a symbol identical to the one Elias had seen on the hotel wall, a circle with 3 diagonal lines and a single eye. Laura whispered, "This isn't just a star map, it's a marker. Like a homing signal." The two decided to trace the first coordinate, which led them to a mountainous region in northern Bolivia, where a mass disappearance had occurred in 1983. The path was treacherous, but when they arrived, only an abandoned village remained. Dry grass covered the cracked earth, but at the center of the square stood a stone pedestal engraved with the same eye symbol. No houses, no relics, just a feeling someone or something had been here. And Elias understood the creature wasn't alone. From then on, their journey became a flight. The men in black began to appear more frequently. Laura was abducted from a hotel in Peru. Elias only caught a glimpse of her arm being dragged past the glass door. He could do nothing. The police refused to investigate. They said there was no one named Laura on the guest list. Elias was now alone. He returned to Buenos Aires to find his former advisor, but the man had died in a lab accident just a week earlier. No body, no death record. Everything about him had vanished from the university system. Elias was desperate, but he didn't give up. He released a portion of the data on the darknet anonymously, hoping some independent researcher would access it and uncover the truth. 3 days later, he received an email. "We know who you are. Stop if you don't want to end up like the others." The email had no sender. It couldn't be traced. And on a night of pouring rain, when Elias returned to his apartment, he found the door unlocked. His computer had been turned on. On the screen was a video, Mariana tied to a chair, her face bruised, speaking through broken breaths. "Elias, stop. It's not them. It's it. It never died. It's waiting." The video went black. Elias sat silently in the empty room, listening to the rain beating against the window like the ticking of a strange clock. And then he understood. The mummy wasn't a relic. It was a clue, and the thing that had been awakened in that desert was still here. Perhaps inside some living body. Perhaps in his own blood. Elias had nowhere left to go. The people he once trusted had vanished or betrayed him. The memories of Mariana and Laura were no longer just pain. They had become fuel for a deep, burning rage and a determination to dig into the core of a secret that NASA, the US government, and those masked with power were desperate to bury at all costs. He changed his identity, moved from one South American country to another using forged documents, staying away from major cities. But the darkness followed him like the shadow of the Atacama mummy. No longer a corpse, but a gateway to something farther, deeper, and older than humanity's imagination. There was no longer any doubt. The creature wasn't dead. It was asleep. And now, through its DNA, something was waking up. Not just in the sand-walled chambers of the desert, but inside the human mind itself. One night, in a rundown bar near the port of Guayaquil, Ecuador, Elias heard a familiar voice from behind. "You shouldn't be here." He turned around. It was Laura. Gaunt, eyes sunken, hair cut short, but it was her. "They didn't catch me. They think they did," she said, pulling Elias away from the bar and leading him through drenched alleyways to a small apartment in an abandoned neighborhood. The room was filled with radio equipment, static-covered monitors, star maps, and old photographs of ancient structures around the world. Egyptian pyramids, Nazca, Angkor Wat, all bearing the same symbol, the round eye. "Elias," she whispered, "I've almost decoded the entire map. But it's not a map to a planet, it's a history, a distorted history." She showed Elias an old film from 1947, recorded by an Argentine pilot. In it, a triangular flying object appeared above the Andes. Soon after, the US government covertly arrived in the area, but the news was suppressed. Then came a series of disappearances in Tierra del Fuego. The points on the DNA map led there, anchor points where the ancient being had once been hidden, like links in a waking system. "We didn't discover aliens," Laura said. "We were found." Elias felt a chill down his spine. Laura continued, "And this isn't their first time here. They were once part of Earth. Then something happened that forced them into hiding. Maybe a war. Maybe betrayal by humanity itself." One of the ancient records she deciphered, on a stone tablet from Nazca, spoke of a sky people hunted and sealed beneath the earth, their blood used to write a memory essence, a form of DNA language. Elias remembered the analysis results. 8% of the Atacama being's DNA sequence was compatible with modern humans, but the rest belonged to something unidentified, a different species. Laura said, "If those anchor points are awakened, it won't just revive memories, it will call back the exiled. We might be their descendants, or just the next victims." Not long after, Laura disappeared again. This time, Elias was left with scattered sketches, notes, and one last video she left on an old computer. "If I don't come back, don't try to stop it. Let the world know. Send it out. Trust no one." Elias, drained of trust but full of panic, decided to leave South America. He made his way to Europe, through an old friend in Romania, where there was a forest once believed to be a crossing point between dimensions in folklore. The Hoya Baciu forest. The symbols in the DNA map pointed to a match. The southern edge of the forest, the exact place where a mass disappearance had occurred in 1972. A research group of 9 vanished overnight, leaving behind only warped equipment, as if affected by a strong magnetic field. There, Elias camped alone, equipped with thermal cameras, magnetometers, and infrared audio recorders. He spent a month scanning signals, hearing unexplainable sounds, whispers in the night, not human. One night, he dreamed of Mariana and Laura standing in the woods, staring at him, their eyes pitch black, their mouths curling in a strange grin. When Elias woke up, there were barefoot tracks around the camp, small, elongated, with 3 toes, not human. Then a phenomenon occurred. The devices began powering on by themselves, the screens flickered violently, and a white mist-like light engulfed the forest. Elias tried to record it, but all data vanished from the hard drive afterward. Only one 13-second audio clip remained, repeating a faint whisper in an unknown language, "Ascende." Elias left Romania in a near-delirious state. He knew it was no longer about discovery. It was a race against time. The markers on the DNA map were being activated one by one, and with each activation, something in reality began to change. The men in black no longer appeared. Instead came the events. Blood rain in a small town in Peru, hundreds of whales committing mass suicide in Chile, thousands of birds dropping dead mid-flight in Greece. All coincided with the timing of the awakening coordinates being triggered. Elias decided to reveal everything. He live-streamed through an underground encrypted network broadcasting the decoded DNA map video along with a warning. We are not alone. We have never been the sole masters of Earth, and what's coming is not a visitation. It's a return. He didn't know how many people were listening, but at least he had spoken. A few days later, the entire internet in the South American region was temporarily shut down. Communication systems failed simultaneously. Then, in a single news broadcast aired in the United States, a short clip appeared. A small mummy staring straight into the camera with sunken eyes and a smile that did not belong to any human being. Beneath it, the words, "Subject A1, reacquisition complete." And at that very moment, the image of those eyes, pitch black without whites as deep as cosmic voids, became the last thing Elias ever saw on any form of mass media. After that strange broadcast, every trace connected to Subject A1, all data about the Atacama mummy, even the DNA analysis results Elias had once published, vanished from the global internet as if they had never existed. Videos once shared, posts, backups on hidden servers, all were wiped with precision and thoroughness, as though some entity beyond firewalls and encryption systems had silently erased the truth from human consciousness. Elias understood the game had changed. What he was facing was no longer human, not a government, but an ancient intelligence, perhaps biological, perhaps immaterial, but one thing was certain: it knew who he was, and it was watching his every move. He fled to Switzerland to a small village near Lake Geneva, where dense fog blanketed the land year-round like a natural veil of protection. There, Elias reconstructed everything from memory: DNA analysis diagrams, maps of the markers, connections to ancient monuments, and the round eye symbol that once appeared in Laura's dreams. But there was one new detail Elias had never noticed before. The center of all the anchor coordinates, if connected by a network, pointed to a single region of the world yet to be thoroughly explored. A point beneath the Southern Ocean, near Antarctica, where magnetic storms constantly disrupted satellites and submarines. The name of that area, Point K22, was a secret encoded in an ancient NASA record that Elias had retrieved from Mariana. No one dared speak of it. No one ever publicly mentioned any research missions there because those who went never came back. A week later, Elias departed for Argentina, then crossed the icy peaks of the Andes to reach Ushuaia, the final city before entering the endless white. He used an old, modified personal submarine acquired from an eccentric technology collector and headed toward Point K22, carrying all his documents, equipment, and above all, the belief that he had to reach that place, even if it meant dying. Within the frigid depths of the ocean where sunlight could no longer reach, Elias felt reality shifting. The pressure gauges began to spike erratically, the magnetic compass spun aimlessly, and then every device ceased functioning, as if an invisible force had bent the laws of physics. He drifted, weightless, in the thick, pitch-black water. But from afar, a mossy green light shone through the rocky seabed. A massive, elliptical stone door, covered in seaweed and bizarre marine life, stood before him. At its center was the glowing round eye symbol, staring directly at him. The door began to open, without any visible mechanism. A resonant sound emerged from the depths, not through his ears, but vibrating within his bones. Elias could no longer control his body. He was pulled in as if his soul were being summoned back to a place it once belonged. When Elias awoke, he found himself in a long corridor made of an unknown substance, neither stone nor metal, but more like a living structure grown from an ancient ocean. Along the walls were bas-reliefs no human hand could craft, tall beings with elongated heads, webbed hands, round eyes, and no mouths, and a script that moved. The characters writhed like insects crawling across skin, making Elias feel as though he was reading with intuition rather than sight. A voice echoed in his mind, not a spoken voice, but a thought imposed upon him. "You have reached the origin." Cold enveloped him, not the chill of water, but of time, frozen time. Everything around him no longer belonged to the present. Each step Elias took down the corridor was a step backward into the collective memory of a civilization that once existed in parallel, then was erased. And at the center of it all was it, a primordial being that existed beyond the dimensions of humanity. Elias saw himself, recreated in a liquid chamber, a cloned version, suspended, soulless. He screamed, but no sound came. The figure beside him, a tall, slender form with round abyssal eyes, leaned in close and whispered, "We do not need humans. We only need their memories." And then Elias understood. Everything that had happened, the Atacama mummy, the DNA map, the anchor points, was not a method of invasion. It was a way to reactivate the soul backup system. Humans were merely vessels, and once the memories were complete, the true entities would return. Elias was torn from his body. He was no longer himself. He was data. He was memory. He was a fragment of code being reread. If you've made it this far, all I can say is look around you. The whispers you hear in the wind, the dreams you can't remember, or that sense of being watched whenever you pass through darkness might not be just your imagination. And if you've ever heard someone mention a small mummy found in the Atacama desert with a structure unlike any human, please don't try to learn more. Once you know too much, you'll be remembered. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you felt a chill down your spine, if something is whispering near your ear right now, then perhaps you've already been named in their memory. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue hearing more terrifying stories. See you again if we are still ourselves.